Apple's most important event of the year is happening next week. In this episode of the Macworld Podcast, we're talking about what we expect to see at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, a new UI design language, new efforts in gaming, and maybe a Siri no-show. It's all on today's show, so stick around. Welcome to the Macworld Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
In the lead up to Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, we went over the state of Apple's major product categories. We discussed the iPad, smart home, Apple Watch, Apple Services, Apple Vision Pro, Mac, and iPhone. So check out those shows if you want our thoughts on those specific products. On today's show, we're going to preview WWDC25 in a more general sense, but we're going to take a bigger, broader look at the keynote and the show next week. There was some news that happened today. We're recording this on Tuesday, exactly 1 week before, or no, I'm sorry, less than
6
a week.
days.
6 days.
6 days.
6 days. I always, because I had it geared in my head so much that Apple announced it's happened on Tuesday.
Yeah, this is like, I think, one of the few, if ever, not ever, but one of the few that's always on a Monday.
Yeah.
It's never, like iPhone is sometimes Tuesday, Wednesday. It's always.
Because it's the whole week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
there are developers who go to Apple Park for like seminars and stuff, workshops all week long.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There was some news that came out this week. The first is that the hash emoji's out. Everyone's all excited about the hash emoji.
okay.
So, but I guess you can use that if you're on social media and you're looking for a way to see all
People use them.
WWDC related stuff. Yeah.
The
People
Apple
use
wouldn't keep doing them if people like, or rather they use hashtags still. Like so.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. The other news came out that Apple sent a message to third-party retail employees about WWDC. First, it said, hey, come watch the keynote at 10 o'clock on Monday, 10 o'clock Pacific. And then it said, and I quote, then check for resources to help you talk to customers about what's possible when hardware and software are designed together.
That's vague.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities of what that could mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could just mean that the rumored UI design language that we've been hearing about is something that Apple's focusing on and just wants to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page on that. That's what it could mean.
If they change how things operate enough, and it's not just like the icons look different, but if there's some new gestures and new ways of operating your phone stuff, they're going to need all the Apple Store employees will be up to speed on that. But like all the third-party retailers, they're going to need some training and some like resources and stuff for them ahead of time so that when people buy things and go like, well, how do I do this? And what they need to be comfortable with like showing people how they work and stuff, it could just be they're getting ahead of major UI changes that aren't just visual and making sure that like all their third-party retailers know how all this stuff is going to work.
It's also that's always been like Apple's thing. Like we design the hardware to work with the software and the software to work with the hardware. And, in recent years, 5 or so, they kind of got away from that a little bit in the sense that, the updates happen, the new hardware doesn't really change much. And then, so it could be at WWDC, they're going to really emphasize how, we design these things to work in harmony, the products together, the products with the software, and just maybe like re-emphasizing that with this, new design language that we keep hearing about.
The other way to interpret that statement is that Apple's going to release a new device next week.
Yeah. I mean, you can say, well, that's a leap, but it's really not, because if this was about software, if you go to Best Buy, the new Macs aren't going to have Mac OS 16 or 26 until September or October even. So like, why would they need to get trained on it now if it wasn't something that was happening immediately?
That's part of it. The other part of it is that, if it's new hardware, it's not going to be a Mac or something like that. There are no existing Macs work that way. The hardware that it would be is this thing that we're all taking to calling HomePad, but their little smart home, it's supposed to be like a 7-inch square-ish device that, runs a different interface. But the reason that this might appear now, even if it's launching in the fall, is because it's supposed to be running a new sort of version of the OS they call Home OS, which is, all these OSs are related under the hood, but a new thing. And if developers need to use new frameworks to hook into it, it's not supposed to have an app store or anything, but it's still, you're going to want to be able to do stuff with it, with your smart home, with media services, all this other kind of stuff. And if developers need to hook into this and there's new frameworks and stuff like that, they need to show it to developers so they can then talk about all of the new frameworks and stuff so that developers can get their stuff ready before this thing launches. They do this all the time when there's a new category. They kind of give a lot of leeway because they need developers to get ready. So it's a decent shot that this HomePad thing will appear just for no other reason than they need developers to get on board.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for WWDC to tease major things like this. Vision Pro a couple of years ago, HomePod, the original HomePod, also made a debut at WWDC, the Mac Pro. So it wouldn't be out of context to show something that's not shipping for 3 to 4 months. Roman, that thing was retailers. That Apple was talking to
third-party retailers.
Yeah. So that also suggests that maybe they'll put it on display at stores ahead of time and get people, maybe you could pre-order it, maybe you just could look at it. And, I don't know. I do know that Apple's in a bit of a weird place right now.
Yeah.
And WWDC is a chance to do something that gets them out of this, funk that they're in.
Since the last fall's major releases, the iPhones, the iOS 18 series of products, that's just a good segue to something we expect to happen there is instead of a different OS name for everything, they are going to unify the names, supposedly. They're going to go with years. They're going to take a page from the car models, and it's going to be next year's. Like, it'll be 26. Everything will be 26. iOS 26, macOS 26 this fall.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense.
People use it across most of 2026. So if it's 2025, it's new for 2 months, and then it's old. So it makes sense to call it 26, to name it.
Yep.
It's because we got 9 months that they use it. Not almost 10 months. So
to your point, it's been a rough since iOS 18 and the new iPhones and stuff. It's been a little rough because they slipped up worse than they have in years with the new Siri and some of the new Apple Intelligence features, and even the features they did ship really didn't light the world on fire. If anything, they sort of solidified in people's minds that Apple's way behind. Like, you use their image generation and it's bad. And you're like, why are you including this app by default on every iPhone?
Yeah, I wonder how many people even bother to open Image Playground, to open the emoji thing, Genmoji.
Yeah.
There was a report I read, I think it was today or yesterday, that it's not just Apple. Like, no one is really buying phones for all these AI features that are coming out. ChatGPT is probably the exception there, that people know that and use that. But it's an app that you can get on any phone. You don't need a specific phone to do that.
There's no ChatGPT phone.
Right. So, yes, Apple has missed the boat and Apple kind of stumbled a bit, but it might not really matter right now as far as the AI stuff goes.
Yeah, they just, to your earlier point, need to convince, I don't want to say convince the world, this is developers and stuff, but they just need to show that, we still have lots of exciting things going on.
Exactly.
It's not all just about AI. We can still deliver on all these other important things.
And all the rumors say that that's kind of what is going to happen at WWDC, where Siri is really going to, I'm sure people expect them to address it. I don't know if they're going to. They might not mention it really at all.
It may be a complete no-show, which would kind of worry me because Siri's bad. I don't want to come out of WWDC going, well, I guess it's just going to be bad until 2027.
Yeah, right. We're getting last year's Siri maybe, and then nothing.
Yeah, some assurances that Siri's going to, at least, if we don't get a next-gen Siri, which none of us are expecting, at least the current series start working right, know what year it is, things like
Yeah. I mean, Apple has the new bit that was supposed to ship with iOS 18 and the Apple Intelligence, the new Siri, the context awareness, the screen awareness, that's allegedly still supposed to ship at some point this year.
Maybe
as part of iOS 19, maybe. But there's all these rumors about a ChatGPT style Siri, a Gemini style thing where it does, it's more conversational and knows things. That's not until next year. Maybe even 2 years.
That's going to be at least the iOS 27, which would come out next fall. at least, if not an update to iOS 27. So if that's that far off, then I would at least hope to see some section of Siri that makes me think, well, at least, I mean, Siri's not going to be super advanced and catch up to ChatGPT and Gemini and stuff, but at least it's going to give me right answers. Like, at least when I ask, is it Mother's Day, it doesn't just say something stupid. Like they just need to fix what they got for now. So I hope we come out of it with at least that.
Backtrack a little bit, because we brought up Siri. So part of the reason that I think we weren't expecting the Home Hub to come out is because it was supposed to be tied to Siri.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which makes a ton of sense.
But if they do release the Home Hub at WWDC, then what?
There's two sets of rumors here. The Home Hub, HomePad, Home whatever, is tied to the Siri that we were supposed to have a couple months ago. The iOS 18 Siri, original Apple Intelligence new Siri, not the super duper still far off Siri. So Apple did say it was delayed and did say it would ship later this year, which we assume as part of iOS 19 at some point. Maybe it ships with iOS 19 in September, which means
26.
that they could deliver this thing. iOS 26.
I know, I can't get
I gotta get used to that.
We're going to make that mistake.
I'm going to write the wrong date on my checks for the first 2 months of the year. Yeah.
So if that ships, if the new Siri stuff ships in September with the first version, that could be the HomePad ships also in September. And then that's only a couple months away. It's about 2 months, 3 months. So.
Yeah, the main features that the HomePad thing was supposed to, I mean, because it was supposed to ship this spring to go with those updates, but
yeah,
it really relies on the personal context angle. Like, it kind of knows things about you from all of the encrypted data stored on your phone, and the app intents, this big explosion of app intents where it's going to be able to take actions within apps for you. So if those things are still coming this year, then HomePad could come this year. And then allegedly, hopefully, they're building the hardware so that when this next generation Siri drops in another year or 2 or 3 or whatever, a software update will bring that to the HomePad as well.
So last year's WWDC, Apple made a big deal about Apple Intelligence. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a section, so to speak. Or what do you guys think?
It's going to be throughout. And they're going to use, watch for this phrase, put this on your bingo card, powered by Apple Intelligence.
Sure, yeah.
You're going to hear that for a lot of features that aren't chatbot things or Siri or anything like that. And a couple have been mentioned so far. That's a health coach, or a fitness coach or something like that. It might be in the fitness app, might be in the health app. But there's supposed to be a big overhaul to health, not necessarily when iOS 26 launches, but in an update in the spring or something like that. And that's supposed to include an AI health coach. But then also battery optimization is another one. A mode that uses AI to prolong your battery life. I think we're going to see it in other places too. There's going to be a new photos feature or something, or videos or something, and they're going to say it's powered by Apple Intelligence. So they're going to really try to, Apple's been doing AI stuff for years that really don't have anything to do with Siri or chatbots or something. They're going to attach that Apple Intelligence branding to all of those kinds of things. They're going to have all those kinds of things throughout. AI generated playlists in Apple Music powered by Apple Intelligence, right?
And you can argue, and we have argued that that's way better than
probably
writing
smart
tools and image generation and all that stuff. That's the things that people are going to use and the people are going to get, use out of without even knowing it's there.
Yeah. The things that happen sort of automatically, or at most you turn on a switch that says, do this, and it does it all the time.
Yep. There have also been rumors that Apple is going to let you, sticking with the kind of AI theme, Apple's going to allow you to use different LLMs, large language models. Right now you can use ChatGPT, and then...
That's it really at the moment.
That's it right now. But do you guys expect them to announce the ability to support other ones that are available?
Yeah, they kind of alluded to that last year when they announced ChatGPT integration.
Yeah, they said they would support others in the future. They're supposed to be supporting Gemini this year, or adding it as an option. And it's not really that those large language models take over anything on your phone. It's just like, if you ask Siri something and Siri can't give you the answer, it then sends your request to some other AI agent. And right now that's ChatGPT, and they're supposed to be adding Gemini as an option. Let's just go in settings and choose which one you want, I guess that's good.
There was a report that Apple had kind of demonstrated its Siri models and kind of went, as you might expect at this early stage, not as good as it could have been, but it was promising.
Yeah, I mean
So, but it's not ready for prime time in any case.
And we've been hearing that for a while. They've published reports. They've done testing.
Yeah, internally they have a chatbot like ChatGPT. Not that they necessarily want to release it ever. There's apparently arguments about whether they ever want to release a chatbot, but they use it to test their AI models and stuff. And they said that where they are now is fairly comparable to recent ChatGPT releases, except that it hallucinates too much. But still, they need to get down to where they need a tiny little model that runs locally on your phone for all the local private stuff. And then they need a big, fancy, high-end model that runs in the cloud. And they need to build the infrastructure for that. They need to do all their trust and safety stuff. Like, they're so far from productizing this. And then they need to decide what they want to do. Is it ever going to be a chatbot? Is it only going to be Siri? Is it only going to be visual, like Siri and visual intelligence? Or am I going to open up a thing and type into a prompt like I do ChatGPT? What you do with these big multimodal LLMs, that's going to be another question. How far does Apple want to go?
We probably won't hear anything about that.
It would be so cool if they did. I would love for them to say, like, here's a peek into something we're working on just like they did with sort of the next gen CarPlay, which they called Next Gen CarPlay. And they didn't, even when they announced it, they said cars won't be announced until next year. And so this is way in the future. And even though they even missed that date, like, it took 2 years before this came out, but they could do the same thing. They could say, hey, this is a look at our next gen AI work. This is not coming soon. It's just a sneak peek at the future, and just show us what they're working on.
And it would, it
just
would
set expectations.
It would make all sorts of headlines and, give them some positive couple days of press for sure. I mean, CarPlay, Next Gen CarPlay, which is now CarPlay Ultra, that was one of the bigger things. That was 2 years ago. And
I think
people questioned it and said, maybe it was 3.
Yeah, they announced
and people said, like, where is it? And blah. And now it's here, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, okay, it's great, it's here. And then it's on these 2 cars, and it's coming to affordable cars in a couple of years. And so we're talking about like a 4 to 5 year gap, but it was fine. Like, there were no pitchforks and like, where is it? Like, we wanted it, now we have it, and there we go.
I mean, part of the reason it's fine is because CarPlay is good. Regular CarPlay is good, and everywhere, and everyone's...
Siri has to be okay.
Yeah, nobody's unhappy with, like, CarPlay and, like, where's the new CarPlay? That's part of it. But yeah, I would love a look at just their future AI stuff or future Siri stuff or however they want to talk it. I don't think we're necessarily going to see that.
No,
they have a lot because they have a lot to cover with the new UI.
Yeah, so the new UI, I guess, should we? I know we've talked about the new UI extensively. Maybe we should kind of cover it again, just one more time. We kind of get hints about what the new UI could be like based on the imagery that Apple's using for WWDC. It's kind of glossy, transparent kind of look.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of that frosted glass kind of look to things.
Which the imagery they do already. Like, there's a lot of parts of the OS that involve those layers and that glassy, the translucentness. It sounds like it's going to be way, way more of that. So if you don't like that, like, good luck, because there's going to be a lot of it. It looks like multi-layers, multi-dimension.
I've seen some people crack that these new version 26 OSs are just basically going to look like Windows Vista. So, but
if you remember that,
Windows Vista looked it looked okay. It just didn't work okay.
They always have a little pun or something with their little tagline with the invite. This year it's sleek peak. So that gives you like an idea that it's going to be about a sleek new UI. The idea is that this UI is supposed to unify the devices more. It's supposed to be less different in how you do things and how things look between iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, Apple TV. Apple TV is going to get the first interface update in a long time. So, and all their apps. That's the other big update here is that, like, Apple Music and Fitness and all the, maps, all these things are going to get this UI. That's a big change.
Yeah, it's the first, like, real new design language in in a really long time. People say iOS 7, and that was true for the iPhone, but that didn't really come to other parts of the
Yeah.
OS for a while.
Yeah,
Like,
they
it's
never.
been a long time, if ever.
I can't remember them. I mean, they always do some features like we're adding Control Center
Yeah.
to Mac or something,
Mhm.
but I can't remember the last time Apple just was like, "This is how everything's going to
Everything.
look."
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Like,
So-
you go back to something like Aqua or Mac OS 10. It was just Mac OS 10. Not that there were
Yeah.
anything else to update at the time,
Right.
but still. So it's going to be really interesting how they handle it, how people react to it, what it looks like. Like, are they going to start the show with this is our new design for everything? Or are they going to do like, here's iOS, here's Mac OS, and it looks all the same. But so I'm curious to see how they approach this.
Yeah, and if they give it a brand name,
Yeah,
Apple loves to do that.
they love brand names.
They love to. So yeah, all those things. I'm curious about all that. I'm curious about how much it's going to work different rather than just look different. Like, because
Right.
iOS 7, for example, it changed the
Totally
locks.
different.
It changed how you
Completely.
unlock your phone.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
changed, like everything, right?
Everything.
So
That's
and
the
they
swiping
just
and all that stuff. Yeah.
not long ago they just did a total overhaul to Control Center. Is that getting
Mhm.
overhauled again? If they overhaul anything, could you please overhaul App Library? It frustrates me to no end. I don't understand how it's got like these big folders and there's like 4 icons, but 3 of them are icons you can tap on and go to the app, and one is an icon that it shows other icons that opens the folder.
Yeah.
And
It's
you
not
can't
intuitive.
decide what folders they are, and the folders reorder themselves, and the apps put themselves in whatever folders they want, and you can't change it. Nowhere else does anything work like this. It's so frustrating. It's terrible.
But just to reiterate the point, if people are sitting there listening going, they don't need to change the interface. It's fine by me. The point is to create a uniformity.
Yeah. And there's an inherent risk and danger in doing something like this, where people are very familiar with their iPhones and their Macs and their iPads and everything else, and major sweeping changes, and not just adding a feature that you may or may not use, but when you turn on that iPhone, when you swipe up from the lock screen, if it's dramatically different, you got to get it right. They went through this with iOS 7, and people were angry. Like, a lot of people don't remember that, but it was like months of like, how do I get this back? And what did they do? And my son's crying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, people get a lot of muscle memory around interface.
Right.
They get a muscle memory around where things are. Like, I guess people don't really realize how much they know where to tap just by the location. They're not reading it. They're not looking at the icon. They're not really looking at the color. They're like, oh, it's this third one. They're just on autopilot. And so when you start changing up how things work, even if it's better, everyone hates it at first.
absolutely.
And so the best they can hope for is to have minimal hate, and then everyone is just accepting of it. Like 6 months later, nobody cared about iOS 7's major update. But for the first few months, everyone was in an uproar. And there are a lot more iPhone users now, a lot more Apple product users now.
Yeah, and as we said, Apple's in this kind of precarious place. If they add this on top of all that other stuff,
Yeah.
It could be a bumpy fall, and that's when things are like, that's the iPhone, that's the Mac. Like, that's an important time for Apple, so they gotta get it right. And like Jason said, the iPhone particularly is built on speed. You don't even think about it. I have to buy boom, 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 and I'm done. If I have to think about each of those steps,
Yeah. Wait, where's this again?
Like, what are we doing? Why are we changing this? This is version 26. Why are we
Never
messing
wrong
with this?
before. Yeah.
Right.
And most people don't watch WWDC. Like, most users aren't even aware of it.
Sure.
They don't see most of the news that comes out of it. Their iPhone tells them to update in sometime in the last week of September or something, and they update it, and then they try to ignore the changes. It pops up like, here's what's different. And you're like, yeah, next, agree, whatever. Just get me. I want you to get back into TikTok. And so they kind of need to get ahead of it. Hopefully, maybe run some commercials or something like that. Things that get into the I'm not paying attention to tech like public, where they expect this thing is coming up. So,
and it's also got to be stable. Like, if this thing crashes, if things don't work, aside from all the new stuff, like, this is a very big risk at a very precarious time for Apple.
And you've got to do this eventually. You have to do this. Like, if you have products that last for a long, long time, a product line that lasts for a long, long time, you either do this every now and then, or you just risk everything just being old and slow and the old way of doing things and the old way of everything operating. I mean, things have changed.
What else in terms of like in general? Do you guys want to talk about the keynote itself? Maybe having a little fun. Like the one question I want to ask is, how many times is Craig Federighi going to jump from one level of the build, one floor to another?
There'll be some stunt. And I mean, they often open it with some sort of cheeky stunt.
Yeah.
More so than they do the iPhone events, right? But because they have some fun with it. It's for developers and people who are really into Apple. So they jump out of a plane or do something fun, So there'll be a stunt, but then there's always the fun transitions. And it seems like the production people have fun ideas. And Craig is the one who's most he's game for like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do something crazy,
Yeah, I mean, the opening video, sometimes it's tied to the theme of the show. So maybe it'll be about change.
I got my money, my bingo card thing is on an F1 thing. They've got their F1 movie coming out. It's about it's called Sleek Peek. There's like a new UI about it being fast. They like to be fast. So somebody's going to get in an F1 and close their lid and drive off in like an Apple F1 car or something. That's my guess.
That's a good point.
It'd be funny if they got in, so they do the F1 theme, and then they like tell Siri to start the car and it can't. Like address all that stuff.
They'll get in an F1 car, and unlike any F1 car ever, it will have digital screens, and it'll have next-gen CarPlay on it, And they'll navigate to Apple Park and drive off in an F1 car.
Yeah, that's not a bad guess. That's probably getting like 3-to-1 odds on poly betting or whatever that's called. That's a good idea.
What else do you guys expect from the show? So I think we mentioned in terms of like sometimes Apple releases hardware at WWDC, but it tends not to be the main focus. There are exceptions like the Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, it's usually at the end. If they do it, I think like they've done like the MacBook Air like interwoven with stuff. But if it's a major new thing, they save it for the one more, the so-called one more thing slot at the end. They get all the software out of the way.
Yeah, sometimes there's a new Mac. It's usually something that developers want, which is a Mac. But
the only one left is the Mac Pro right now, and I don't think we're getting that. So
yeah, if it's brand new hardware, like it looks different and stuff like that, it usually comes at the end. And Vision Pro was another example of one of those. They announced it well ahead of time because developers need to get on board with this new OS and how it's all going to work and new frameworks, and get your apps ready.
We haven't heard a lot about new hardware because usually since hardware involves third parties, that's where you get the rumors from. And we haven't really heard a lot that's about the timing of next week. So I'm not expecting new hardware, but
if there's new hardware, it's not going to be something like a MacBook that's about to ship because, like you said, we hear about it. If there's new hardware and it comes out this fall, like the HomePad, we wouldn't necessarily have heard about all their parts orders from all their suppliers yet because they'd be ramping up this summer.
Yeah, and the Mac cycle, we know the iPhone cycle, so it's too early for that. And then the Mac cycle, I think it's pretty much established now that it's more or less October, November, with something in the MacBook Air in the early part of the year, sometimes with the Mac Studio, Mac Mini. So WWDC, maybe they come out with a Mac Pro, but we'd totally be surprised if that happened. So,
yeah, if there was some sort of new Mac Pro, it would be a big surprise. I mean, and they just released a bunch of M4 Mac things. I mean, they've all been updated within the last couple of months for the most part. So it's possible. There's the other sort of edge case here is something like M4 Ultra in Mac Studio, like because right now it's an M3 Ultra, but M4s for the rest of the Mac Studio line, and then M4 Ultra and 3 Ultra, right? Ultra. So maybe there's an M4 Ultra or something. That would be something that we wouldn't necessarily hear about ahead of time. So if there's hardware, maybe HomePad.
iPad's on its own cycle. I mean, the new iPad Pros just came out, so that and Apple Watch is in the fall also. So
same time as always the same time as the iPhone.
What else do you guys expect from the show? Anything out of the blue? Anything we haven't really covered?
I think there might be a new service update, a new service. I think Health Plus is a very real possibility. It will be the first. There's a big update to the Health app coming, apparently. If not right at launch then in the spring or something. But that may coincide with a new Health Plus service, and that would give you the AI health coach thing. Also, food tracking is the other sort of hint at stuff that's coming. So you would there's a bunch of apps that do it. MyFitnessPal is probably the most popular or something, but scan the barcodes on your food or type in what you do, and it does all your nutritional value and calories and macros and tracks that stuff for you. So like a food diary, a feature might be part of that, and it might be all part of a new thing called Health Plus, and then they'll do other new that will grow into more stuff over time, just like their other services do. And it'll get rolled into Apple One if you've got Apple One, and that would be my guess.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 937. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, on YouTube, at the Macworld Podcast channel, or through any other podcast app. Do you have any comments or questions? Send us an email at podcast@macworld.com or contact us through Blue Sky, Facebook, or Threads. Just search for Macworld and look for the Blue Mouse logo. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.